Ambassador Malhotra, your view, are sanctions working on Russia, or are sanctions hurting Europe as much, Africa when it comes to wheat and food grain? Are these sanctions hurting the world in general? They're intended to target Russia. What's the way forward in your view?
Indeed, they are hurting the world. And so far, I think the Russian economy has handily shown its resilience. I think, as previous speakers mentioned, after an initial decline to 130 rubles against the dollar, it's now at 64. And far from collapsing, the ruble is right now the best performing currency against the dollar this year. The reference was there to interest rates being brought down from 20 to 11%. And the crude oil price of Brent being 117 per barrel means that Russia is getting a huge bonus. Russia, anything above 60 is a major add-on for it, yes. 60 per barrel. And even if you see Western assessments today, whereas earlier they were saying that the Russian economy will decline by 40%, now they're saying that they've toned it down to an 8% decline, which is a normal sort of a thing and can happen to anyone. The impact has equally been on Western economies, let's not get that wrong. But the real suffering has been, I think, on many in poorer countries due to food, wheat, sunflower oil and other products. And there are growing fears of a humanitarian catastrophe in these countries, which is simply linked with the fact that some countries want to continue fighting and others are pouring in highly sophisticated weaponry to encourage them to do so.
And the African Union
to find a solution up here.
Absolutely, and the African Union has raised this. The United Nations is now getting involved. Mr. Bandola, are talks and negotiated peace settlement, as suggested by Henry Kissinger, perhaps a possible way forward? Do you see this as a way forward?
I do. I hope that's what ultimately happens, but I don't think it's imminent. As you've said, as we've discussed, the war is raging, at a high intensity in the east. The U.S. is keeping Ukraine afloat. The U.S. and Europeans, to a lesser degree, militarily. The Russians have certainly, as the previous speaker said, as the ambassador said, the Russian economy is proved surprisingly resilient and has kind of rebuffed, some of those initial fears of collapse. So I think I don't think any kind of negotiated solution or even a ceasefire is imminent. I think both countries have proven they can take a lot of pain militarily and economically.
And economically.
That's going to be ongoing. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Dr. Akilvidani, then what's the way forward, given the fact that this conflict is actually hurting poorer countries much more? Look at what the African Union is saying. They need the wheat, they need the oil, and they want the United Nations to intervene. And Russia's made it very clear that if you're taking this wheat out, you also take their products out.
Indeed, but I think international community should have the leverage, and it will have the enough leverage on Russia to basically enable the country to stop blocking the Black Sea ports that are now blocked in Ukraine, which doesn't enable all the exports of the wheat and grains to leave the country, and therefore there is this international shortages. And here the unity and coordinated action of all the Western powers, G7 and international community, would really be the key to increase the pressure and leverage on Russia, because these grains and wheat, like 90% of them, are now sitting there and basically are just lost and wasted. So indeed, Russia should stop weaponizing food and stop seizing the ports. That could be the only way out from this current situation. This will require increased negotiations and pressure on Russia. And as for the overall effect of the sanctions, obviously we already see the effect of sanctions in the Western countries and also globally. However, we do not have exact precise information how these sanctions are hurting the average citizens in Russia. All we can see is something that Russia is reporting, but we do not have access to the information on the ground.
Let me put that question to Xenia Kondrateva. President Putin is being accused of weaponizing hunger. UK is saying that, several countries are saying you cannot stop the supply of wheat to Africa and use this as a tool to get sanctions off you. How are people in Russia taking these sanctions? How is it impacting you?
See, people in Russia are facing obviously different sanctions, and they do not know, or they would not believe that Russia is weaponizing food or energy for that matter, because there is a war happening in the country, and the ports are blocked not because Russia wants to, restrict the supplies of grain to the other countries. That I hope that is understood clearly by everyone who is speaking on the panel. But if you ask how, because some of the speakers have doubted how sanctions impact Russians. So I must say that immediate impacts are only felt by those Russians that are some 2 or 3 of people who lost their jobs immediately after the Western companies have pulled out. We will see the impact, the massive impact, maybe 6 months or 1 year down the line.
Okay.
But immediately you cannot say that the entire country is really struggling economically. People have not yet, I repeat it, yet felt those pressures.